Welcome to Grief is the New Normal. I'm Dr. Heather Taylor, a licensed psychologist and grief specialist, here to help change the conversation about grief and build community and connection while we all adjust to this new normal we are living in. This podcast is for you if you are grieving or if you are supporting someone in a season of grief. I'm glad you're here. Welcome, everyone. I am really excited for today's conversation. Joining us, I have Ahlia Kim. She's an LMFT. She gets to travel the world. She is a Seattle-based therapist and then also is based out of Korea. Ahlia, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Do you mind sharing about your background and the work that you do?
Absolutely. So I am, as you said, a licensed marriage family therapist in the state of Washington. I am the founder of Well Harbor Therapy, which is a therapy clinic that primarily focuses on infertility. I especially work on topics around IUI, IVF, third-party donor, and recurrent pregnancy loss.
Was there something about this type of work that really called you to it?
Yes, I am part of this community myself, and I became passionate about it after going through the experience of infertility, really wanting to help make this topic not taboo,
Yeah.
help people that do have children and did not go through fertility struggles to really connect with their loved ones. So this is a growing community. We used to be 1 in 8, but in my lifetime, even we've become 1 in 6 couples will face infertility and need assistance to build their family. As that number is growing and it's becoming more and more of us, I believe that it should be less and less taboo.
Yeah, that's so important. And thank you for sharing about your own experience there as well. It's interesting being in the field that we're in and how so much of our own life experiences and processes impact the directions that our work can go.
Absolutely.
As we talk about infertility, it's very often misunderstood or dismissed. How do you help clients recognize what they're experiencing as a valid form of grief, even when others don't see it that way?
Yes. Many people who have lived through infertility do have that deep awareness that this grief is valid because it exists. We live with it every day. We wake up with it every day. The grief is there. And so often my work with clients is giving them permission to feel that and to experience it and finding ways of expressing it within safe relationships, within different even anniversary dates, the same ways that other grievers may grieve their experiences. Additionally, we do have some science behind this. We have done studies dating even back into the early 90s, where we have learned that particularly women going through IVF have the same rates of anxiety and depression as women going through things like heart failure treatments, organ transplants, and in some cases, certain types of cancer.
Wow. So there's actual studies that go back into the 90s that show those same level.
Yes.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and those studies have been built on to this day. And I'm always careful saying this because that is never to discount how painful these other experiences are for
Yeah.
people with their conditions. But infertility is a disease. And it is one that is highly misunderstood, and most people don't know what goes into the treatment of this disease. And it's very
Yeah.
significant. So
Yeah.
sometimes I bring these studies to the awareness of my clients or their families just to help them digest that this grief they're feeling is heavy because it's heavy.
Yeah. It's in a similar vein of, like you mentioned, heart failure or cancer treatments. Like those are chronic health conditions. And there is grief when we get a chronic health condition diagnosis. It's a disenfranchised type of grief. It's something people don't really talk about. And so getting an infertility diagnosis is in a similar vein. And that makes so much sense in my head hearing you describe it that way, especially when you're looking at the physiological response being on par with, yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yes.
With people navigating infertility and pregnancy loss, they often hear a lot of really unhelpful and even harmful comments. Things like, just relax, or you can always adopt, or those platitudes, things like that. What are some of those most common microaggressions and micro invalidations your clients experience, and how do you help them navigate that?
Yes. Many of my clients that come in to see me have not had the terminology of microaggression and microinvalidation right yet.
Okay.
So sometimes there is a bit of a learning curve for naming what this is.
Yeah.
Early on, we call them our paper cut comments, death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
So sometimes I try to take it back a little bit and bring it to a historical level, even that we live in a culture that has historically, tracing back to ancient Greece, where we have really villainized women in particular who cannot have kids. We have studies from way back that even show that women lost their pronouns and they could not have children and were no longer referred to as a woman. And this is something that sticks in us for a long time, and our culture retains certain parts of this. So these microaggressions come out of that experience of living in a society that sees women who cannot have children as a little bit less, and a little bit less of a woman. And there's just that little taste in there still. So sometimes that helps us identify what these are. Things like a boss assuming that a woman that doesn't have kids should be able to work late because she has less of a life to attend.
Right.
Yeah, so these sorts of things are still in our culture. And when we identify it as us pushing back against this broader cultural experience instead of against this one person, that can help us have a little bit of oomph to speak into it and to identify what's going on and know it's not just between me and you, or it's between me and my boss. I'm helping educate, I'm helping bring you into the awareness of this. So sometimes I frame it that way. When I'm talking to friends and family of somebody that is experiencing infertility, my little go-to word is, it's never just. If you start a sentence with just, it's probably not going to be helpful.
Or
At least
I hear that one a lot with griefy work is, at least we had this much time, or at least you got to say goodbye.
Yes. Yeah. If you hear that phrase come out of your mouth, it's a really good one to pause and go, maybe I don't want to say this.
Right? Because is what I'm saying actually going to be helpful, or am I trying to minimize their pain because I'm uncomfortable sitting in that pain space with them? So by choosing the just comments or the at least comments, that says more about me as the one speaking it than about the experience. And so helping our clients have context for that and how to push back or reframe or challenge. Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah. And since these comments are often showing a disparity in privilege, that disparity being that some people get to choose when and if they want to have kids, even people within the childless by choice community, they get to choose when and if. And the underprivileged piece being those that do not get to choose when and if. And when we understand it as a little bit of this privilege and power dynamic, it can also allow those in the infertility community to speak into it with a bit of agency and know that the thing that will allow them to feel a little bit better in these yucky situations and take that edge off is not just swallowing it, not always just setting a boundary, but sometimes it is showing up with that increased agency. And some of my clients do this through humor, which I love. I actually have two clients, they do the same thing, which cracks me up. I have two clients that have created bingo cards when they go to like big family events. If people say the comments to them, why haven't you tried adopting? Have you tried this? Even some recommendations around sex that are wildly uncomfortable to receive. And someone in this community, they have a bingo card, and whichever partner gets bingo first gets to pick their dinner on the way home. And that increases our agency. That's why that works.
I love that. I love the idea of creating a bingo card for family events, those well-meaning extended family that just shove their foot in their mouth, bless their hearts. And then you get the reward. Like, if I hit bingo first, then I get I love that. And I think humor can be such a helpful coping strategy because this is vulnerable, this is painful, this is that agency. And I'm even thinking about how like late night shows these days are helping us cope with the distress in the world around us. They're talking about real hard things and they're doing it with a lens of humor to help us feel more empowered and control. So I love that idea of making a bingo card with the dumb shit people say. Dumb shit people say. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I love that. I'm going to tuck that one away for some of my griefy clients.
Please do.
Speaking of family systems, grief in infertility doesn't just belong to the person experience. It can carry across generations in really different ways. How do you see generational grief showing up in your work, and how do you help clients untangle some of those layers?
Yes. This really ties back to what we were sharing when we were talking about the just statements, where when our loved ones approach us from a space where they're struggling to hold their own grief, where they are struggling to hold their own comfort, it can come out in some really yucky ways, in some really painful ways. In the infertility journey, it is a full family system concern. It is not just between the couple experiencing it. Many times my clients have parents that desperately want to be grandparents. They want to fit in with their friend group. They want to talk to their friends about the cute photos and the baby showers and be in that life stage with their friends. And if they're not managing their grief and getting support around it, sometimes it can leak out in some really ouchy ways to the couple experiencing infertility. Yeah. This can also be true for siblings, that there can be some role reversal that happens. If you're, let's say, an oldest daughter that's going through infertility that has viewed yourself as this caretaker, as this protector, as this guide in the family, and you're struggling with infertility, and your younger siblings get to have kids first, that can really shake up your sense of your role in the family and who you get to be. There can be a lot of grief in that, not just for the oldest sister, but for the younger siblings too, who now wonder, what am I supposed to do in this system? Things feel out of order all of a sudden. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that creates grief and room for conversation so that we can grow through it. In addition to that, it can also go down, not just up in generations, but down in generations. So a couple that has struggled with infertility may also have a lot of fear that they're going to pass on infertility to their kids, even though that is not necessarily always scientifically backed, depending on their diagnosis. It's a really big fear that they will be harming their children in some way. Or children that are acutely aware of their parents' infertility journey have reported sometimes feeling increased stress for wanting to live up to something. Yeah. So this impacts every generation and every person in a family system, because by nature, it is a family concern.
And I would imagine that also is, like you were saying, the grandparents, they're wanting to be in that same stage as their peers. It's like we're wanting to be in that same stage with our peers too. And it's like we're feeling like we're getting left behind because we're having kids later in a more delayed state because of that infertility diagnosis and the complications coming there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I imagine that in the work that you do with grieving clients, it's common in the grief community to talk about how we grieve out, not in. So we grieve if someone's grief touches our life, like a grandparent, let's say, they go get their support to go navigate that. They don't turn inward and ask for support from the infertility couple. Or like the siblings that are saying, oh, I really had this dream that we could raise our kids all together, but my sibling is struggling with infertility. They go find support and grieve out into their community, as opposed to turning that inward towards their sibling.
Yes, period, exclamation point. I hear that all the time. And just that wanting to feeling othered within the family system because we're not on that same timeline or trajectory that we thought we were going to be. Like you said, with the older sibling thinking that they were going to spearhead the way. And then it's, oh, and now I feel like time-wise or life trajectory wise, I'm getting surpassed by my younger siblings. And now it's like, are my kids, if I'm able to have kids, are they going to get left behind? And what's that going to mean? How does that impact roles? And yeah, it's so tricky how it impacts all these different branches within a family system, within friend systems, within a community.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite a web.
Like we were just talking about, infertility doesn't just change someone's family plans. It can completely reshape how they see their future, their body, even their sense of self. How do you help people process that kind of identity impact?
So, at its core, for many of my clients, infertility is a worldview change. For many clients, they come to me talking about how this is the first time in their life that they have wanted something desperately and not had control. Actually, most of us don't experience that early in life. Some do, not all, where we want to get an A in a class, but studying doesn't work. Or we want to get on a team, but practice and exercise doesn't work. For many of us growing up, there is this kind of promise that if you work hard, you can actuate an outcome. And then infertility happens, and that breaks down enormously, where you can throw your life savings at it. People have sold their homes, they've overhauled their diets, they've taken every supplement, they've flown to go see the best doctors, they've given it 10 years. And no matter what we throw at it, we cannot actuate that outcome. It's not 100% in our control.
Yeah.
And that creates a worldview crisis for a lot of people where they say, I've built my life on this principle that if I work hard, I'll get an outcome. And the reverse of that being, if I don't get an outcome, it means something about me, that I didn't work hard enough, that I didn't do enough, that I wasn't good enough. And infertility is a beautiful opportunity in some ways to rewrite that, to hold space that maybe that worldview was never true and never true for anybody. And maybe we can now become people that are even more compassionate, that are gentler and kinder to ourselves, and hold space for sometimes life being unfair. And that it doesn't have to mean anything about you.
Yeah. It doesn't speak to your worth. You haven't failed. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're doing this work of identity, that's really what we're after, is this worldview change of that who am I in this world where I have to now change how I understand that the world works.
The reframe for self-compassion, I think, is so beautiful there, that, I can be gentler with myself. I don't have to produce to have worth. And it's not just like a simple process together. Just for those listeners, like, this is not like I'm just suddenly going to have this magical mental shift and I'll be all zen about it. It's no, like, this is hard-earned, heartfelt over a lifetime of processing. We're not in no way trying to simplify the depth of impact here on identity. But I love how you framed that, and what a great invitation for your clients to be curious about, what does that mean for me? How do I want to show compassion for myself as we continue to navigate this experience, this process, these outcomes?
Yeah. And to your point, maybe it's never even a destination that we get to. I often wonder if, even in my own life, if it's this continual process of each moment I have that invitation of, am I going to live into this worldview where I don't have tolerance for myself not meeting an outcome? Or do I have compassion for myself in a life that is sometimes unfair? Holding space for that. And it can be moment to moment. And if you were to watch me out in the wild, you would see me make various choices throughout the day on it.
I think that speaks to the greater picture of grief here, right? Like, grief is painful. And that's why people cling to the 5-stage model, is because if I hit so many boxes, then that means I get to the end, I hit the goal, and I'm done grieving. When really, grief is a lifelong process. Grief never goes away. It just gets different over time. We learn how to carry it differently through different seasons of life. And so I think in this same vein, it's this lifelong invitation to be curious, to have that self-compassion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to that point, I would add that infertility grief is lifelong, even if you get to have the baby. Because of this principle that we're talking about, this lived experience of grief is so tied to our worldview, so tied to our identity, that when it's touched us, it changes us. And maybe in this context, that's okay, and not something that once you have a baby through IVF, that you have to suddenly go and try to fix your grief. Maybe it's okay that it's touched you and changed you.
That's so true. And even in the question, it's talking about grief around your body. And so there's this grief that, like, because so often, and I'm sure you've heard, your clients have heard, that if you're able to get pregnant and carry to full term, once you get to even just the delivery piece, it's just trust your body. And so many of my clients, and you're smirking if you're just listening to this and not watching this on YouTube, Ahlia was smirking at my response there. She knows where I'm going, because it's like, I can't trust my body. I'm grieving that I can't trust my body because I had to have outside help to get this thing that I wanted. And I was maybe able to be successful and carry a pregnancy full term. And there's still grief there because I don't trust my body. And that is such a common encouragement in hospitals with midwives, is trust your body. As you're becoming a parent, you'll trust your gut, trust your instincts. And it's like, there's been this rupture of trust with ourselves, and there's grief there. And that needs to be talked about and processed and understood, so you can find a way to move through that. But it's still going to continue to show up in different ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With infertility and pregnancy loss, that can be a type of disenfranchised type grief. When thinking about how, when we're grieving and other people don't maybe recognize, honor, or hold space for that, and there's not like clear societal rituals or practices around this, how do you help clients honor and hold space for this kind of grief?
Yes, each client's journey in holding space for their grief is so personal and so unique. In many ways, this is one of my favorite parts of my job as an infertility grief therapist, because I get to sit with my clients and learn so much about them as they're coming up with ways to hold their disenfranchised grief. I've had clients that have planted a tree after each embryo loss and created a beautiful garden that they got to walk through. I've had clients honor anniversaries. I've had clients do family trips to honor this stage in their life, for clients that are maybe going from trying to conceive to childless not by choice, across that threshold. So there's a million iterations of this. And I think each person is fully capable of finding their own way that they can resonate with it. The part where I come in is the permission. Is how we give you permission to honor what you're feeling, to hold that space, even if others don't understand it. It may look like inviting family members into some of the psychoeducation and bringing them in on some of that awareness. That's not always possible, and that's not always someone's preference. So that can also be, how do we talk to ourselves about what's happening? How do we validate ourselves and not minimize our own lived experience?
Yeah, that inviting people into that meaning-making work is so important. And like you said, it's going to look unique to each client, and that permission. And I think that's what's so hard in our current society, that has been the issue for a long time, is we're very grief illiterate and grief phobic, and we don't want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. And you don't think about the grief experience in trying to bring life, because grief is usually associated with death. And so it's even more complicated trying to figure out how to bridge that. And so I think that helping our clients feel empowered to have permission to make the rules for themselves of what feels good, that's so important there.
Absolutely.
Many people experiencing infertility also really struggle with feeling isolated, especially when surrounded by pregnancy announcements, baby showers, gender reveals on social media. What are some ways people can protect their emotional well-being and setting boundaries while still staying connected to their communities?
Yes. This is a really tricky one for a lot of clients. In my own lived experience, it's very tricky.
Mm.
In part because the same door that we open to receive connection and belonging is that same door that allows in those microaggressions or some of the pain that can happen, because relationships with people are messy. And the people that we love are often the very same people that may show up for us in helpful ways and harmful ways. It's very rare that someone is exclusively in one category or another.
Right.
It's a mixed bag. So if we want connection, we are also going to be facing some parts of this that are painful. And in many ways, that's good news, because it means that those same skills that we navigate other painful things with our loved ones can be utilized here. We can have conversations with our loved ones about our boundaries. We can invite even family healing on changing patterns around family silence on topics of pain. It can be the same things that you would do in any other form of therapy in many ways. These same principles that we utilize in any other setting can be utilized here with boundary setting, important conversations, asking for help. Yeah, they show up here too. And there are specific events, things like a baby shower. That one is a hot topic in our community.
Yeah.
That one stands alone as something in and of itself. And even that can be something that we negotiate through these same concepts. It may look like sending your loved one a text and say, I am so happy for you and I am so excited. I am not feeling 100% up to a baby shower. Can I take you to coffee the morning of or the day after to celebrate you? We're negotiating these things of what am I able to offer and what am I hoping to achieve? I want to honor you. I want to celebrate with you. I want to experience this. Me watching you open a bunch of onesies, probably not going to be realistic for me. I will not be able to hold the celebration space with you. I will be in the grief space. How can I show up with you so that I can celebrate and also acknowledge my limitations currently given my situation? And different people will respond to that differently, but it's the invitation that's on the table, just like in any other conflict that we experience in friendships.
Absolutely. I use the spoon metaphor a lot with my clients. And it's okay, what do you have the capacity for? How many spoons do you feel up for spending around this? Do you feel like being in a social gathering where this is the entire focus? How many spoons is that going to cost you? They're like, more than I have. So it's, how do I compromise? How do I still make connection? Like you said, the goal is to celebrate my friend who I am genuinely happy for. And that's going to cost 2 spoons to take them to coffee versus 20 spoons and then 4 days of emotional recovery after trying to go to a baby shower. That's just not within what I can do in this season. Yeah. And you're allowed to protect your peace in that way. And that doesn't mean you're less than as a friend. It just means you're aware that I only have so much. And I do want to celebrate and engage and connect with my one person. And I don't have to subject myself to the rest of the chaos and the noise to be considered a good friend.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yay,
I love the spoon
boundaries.
theory. Yeah.
Yes, the spoons. In that kind of similar vein, there's often pressure to quote unquote stay positive or quote unquote there's that word, just keep trying. And that's exhausting. That can be exhausting. So how do you help clients balance that grief, finding that peace and resilience, and then whatever comes next without pushing toxic positivity?
Mm-hmm. This one is particularly difficult because in the infertility community, even on the clinic, like the doctor level, there can be this superstition that the more positive you are, the better your fertility outcome. And we don't really have the science to back that up, but it's a really deeply held superstition that will even be mentioned to you in passing by your nurses and doctors when you're going through this journey. And it can have a little bit of that like chin up type message. Just chin up, get through it. in its least malicious form and its most like kind version of that is, I want you to be doing okay. And in the tougher version of it, it's, you're making me uncomfortable. And yeah, this is really tricky also because of that belief that people hold on this journey that my positivity and how hopeful I can be is tied to the outcome of this. And that maybe if I am not positive enough, this won't work for me and it will be my fault.
Yeah.
Not being positive enough. So this is just really layered, this
Yeah.
conversation. So when I engage clients on this, we utilize something that I call reasonable hope. We have our capital H hope up here of I want to have a baby. What I'm looking for is, what is your reasonable hope? If we're running a marathon and your goal is to finish the marathon, that's great. But if you ask someone that runs marathons, how do you get to that goal? It's mile by mile. And so I'm looking for, what are your mile markers? What are things that we have that are a little bit closer, more attainable, and that you have more autonomy and agency over to ensure that happens? So this may be something like, I'm really looking forward to being at the end of this stim cycle with the shots. Or I'm really looking forward to my French fries after transfer day. That sounds really exciting. And we're looking for that reasonable hope, this thing that we know we can get to and achieve, that we put as a little bit closer to the forefront of our mind. It's our little mile markers. So that's one piece. In addition, I also want us to have a second capital H hope way up here, where, yes, if you're running the marathon, you want to get to the end of the marathon. But what else?
Mm.
What else do you want to do? Do you want to do your best at it? Do you want to do it in a community where you have a running group, or whatever we're doing to create, in this analogy, in the infertility community? I'm looking for something like, I want to have a life that I enjoy.
Mm.
I want to do something that feels really meaningful. These things that are not tied specifically to our fertility outcomes, things that are in our power regardless of how our fertility journey goes. And I'm looking to add one or two more of those onto our list. Yes, you can continue to hope to have a baby. Absolutely. I'm hoping that right along with you. And what else? What else are we looking for?
I love that reminder. I think reasonable hope, that's such a great reminder that, yes, you can have the capital H hope up here. And then also, what are the reasonable things that I'm hoping for? What are the things that are helping me stay mile by mile? I think that's so important. And for listeners that aren't as familiar with the infertility community, getting French fries on transfer day that's a big tradition on transfer day. And there's something about the sodium. And then the other piece, with the toxic positivity, or the like jinxing it, or my mental set impacting outcome. I'm thinking of a client I've worked with who, they had a couple of miscarriages and then they got pregnant, and they were going through each week, and it was like, we were meeting weekly at that time, and they felt so much guilt and were shaming themselves because they weren't letting themselves emotionally attach to the pregnancy, because they were so afraid it was going to end in miscarriage again. And working through that, okay, like you said, what can we hope for right now? What can help us stay engaged? If it doesn't feel safe to attach at 10 weeks, okay, like, what's the next scan? What can we be working towards then? And making it these digestible goals, these realistic goals, these 1 miles at a time. I think that's such a great reminder, because these are all really emotionally complicated processes, and we feel really vulnerable. We've been invested in the journey for a while. It's like, we're not coming into IVF just, I didn't get pregnant for 1 month and now I'm jumping to IVF. It's been a time commitment investment process, and we're already feeling burned out and overwhelmed and grieving from the monthly compounded grief that's been occurring for a while. And so I think that's such a great reminder that I just need to think about it mile by mile, and I don't have to have the big H hope as that's what each mile needs to represent. Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. The marathon analogy is, either if I don't bring it up, my client will. There seems to be something just close to the heart about the marathon analogy for those in the infertility community that I talk about it with almost every client. See it online. It's that mile by mile.
Yeah. Okay, as we start to wrap up this conversation, in thinking for those who maybe aren't in the infertility community, but are friends and family who want to support someone who is going through infertility or pregnancy loss, what are some meaningful ways to show up without the toxic positivity, without making it worse? Like, how can our support people best show up?
That's a great question. When I'm talking to support people, I invite them to, if they're experiencing grief themselves around this, to get their own support first and foremost. Airplane analogy, we need you to put on your mask so that you can help your loved ones. If you are tending to grief or fear or anything else around this as it relates to your infertile loved one, go ahead and put on that mask and take care of yourself and get that support. That will set you up to be a great support person. The other thing that we invite them into is curiosity. You don't need to know how to help yet, because even me, an infertility therapist, I don't know how to help until I ask. So I want you to ask questions. Say, what would feel helpful? Would you like me to drive you to the clinic? Would you like me to walk your dog on date? Whatever it is, we ask questions. We ask what this journey has been like for them. We ask where the areas of pain are. We ask things that aren't even related to infertility. We ask about other things of their life. This is not the only true thing about this person. What have your pottery classes been like lately? Whatever it is.
Have you finished Onyx Storm yet?
Yeah. Approaching with curiosity about what is important to this person, what would feel helpful, what else is going on in their life that you can engage in. Supporting someone going through infertility is okay to support the whole person. It doesn't just have to be their fertility journey.
Yeah.
It's okay if the way that you show up for them doesn't touch the fertility part of their journey, but helps them hold hope of life outside of this journey too.
Curiosity is one of my favorite invitations because it's the most neutral emotion and we're not making assumptions, we're not generalizing, and then offering options. It's that I don't know what they're going to need, but would it be helpful if I brought dinner or sent an Uber Eats dinner? Or can I walk your dog while you're doing transfer day, or dog sit, hang out with your pet, whatever that is. Those practical things that help reduce their stress, the one less thing to worry about, and offering options, because maybe making decisions is hard when we're in that vulnerable space or we're trying to rest. And so I'm going to make lasagna. Can I make a lasagna for you guys too? I'll just double up my recipe. It doesn't have to be these big grand gestures. It's the small in the day-to-day and the consistent invitations to show up, connect, offer distractions, offer respite, offer to just be in that space if that feels good to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those care plans are important. Ahlia, is there anything that we haven't touched on today that you were hoping we would cover?
There's always more to say about the infertility journey. But I think that this was a starting point. This doesn't need to be all the information today. It's okay if this is our first taste and people can learn more.
Yeah. And we can always have you back for a deep dive conversation.
It'd be very fun.
So I guess maybe what would be your one or two big takeaways for those listening to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think that my biggest takeaway from the infertility journey, when I'm trying to synthesize what I've witnessed from my clients, is that this is a journey of grief and hope. And it is very difficult to hold both at the same time. And that's okay.
Yeah.
We seek support when we need to hold both. It's a long and it's a heavy journey, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for support. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to hope.
Okay. Do you have any upcoming projects? If people are interested in working with you, what is the best way to get connected with you? Are you on social media? Those kinds of things.
Yes. If you'd like to get connected with me, I work at Well Harbor Therapy. I have a Instagram page that I recently posted, so there's not a lot on it yet, but you can give it a follow. I will be participating in a PhD program starting in the fall, continuing the study on the emotional impact of infertility. So if you're curious about the science part of this, you can keep track of my work going on that end, also through my Instagram pages where I'll be posting that. And I'm actually currently working on a ebook that will be coming out on my Well Harbor website that is intended for support people of those going through infertility. And that should be coming out this year. So yeah, you can keep track of that.
Ahlia, thank you so much for joining for today's conversation. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to be kind to yourselves today. Take care. That's it for today's episode of Grief is the New Normal. If this conversation resonated with you or you think it might benefit someone else, please share it. Sharing can open doors to healing, understanding, and normalizing these griefy conversations. If you're craving deeper insights or ongoing support, consider signing up for the Grief Gap newsletter. It's packed with resources, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate your grief journey. Visit the website www.griefisthenewnormal.com to subscribe. For those who prefer a more personal touch to their healing process, check out my grief journal, Authentically Unapologetic. It's designed to help you explore your grief on your own terms, with prompts and exercises that encourage reflection and growth. I'm Dr. Heather Taylor, and I look forward to our next meaningful conversation. Our soothing tunes are provided by the Datacorns. If you're interested in sharing your story, collaborating, or learning more, please email me at hello@griefisthenewnormal.com. You can also stream the episodes on YouTube for more engaging content. Until next time, keep exploring your grief with intention and support, remembering you don't have to do this alone.